I'm Bonnie Koven, and I was a student here in 1964, graduated, and a graduate student from '65 in chemistry. Uh, I am now on the board and have been a chair of the board for many years.
I'm Ed Koven. I graduated, got a BA in 1962 with an economics major, and got a JD from the Northwestern Law School in 1965.
Okay. Well, we have differing views on it. So, Ed, I'll let you start.
I think we initially met at the Scott Hall Grill. However, we got to know each other at the Hillel building on Sheridan Road. And
Judson, actually. Judson.
Whichever street it was. But it was, that's where we really spend a lot of time. And not only at the Hillel, but got to know the director of the Hillel there. And we were very fortunate. I guess you were in Livians and I was in Praetorians. And the majority of people that congregated there were commuters at that time.
So for most of us, economics was such that we didn't have the money to join a Greek system, a sorority fraternity. So there were 4 actual commuting groups. 2 were Jewish and 2 were egalitarian, I guess you'd say. So Praetorians were the men's and Livians were the women. And of course those were Roman names, not Greek names. So we were making a little statement there. The other 2 groups were men off campus and women off campus. And for Livians and Praetorians, we did meet at the Hillel building pretty regularly. So that when Ed just had a reunion of the Praetorians, big sign, Hillel. You know, so certainly there was a big identification there.
Basically, for the Praetorians, there was a social gathering group, and where events were planned throughout the year, and it was also a Jewish setting where many of the things that were planned were consistent with our religious practices.
See, and I just remember dances. All off campus because it was also a dry campus at the time. So.
And the dances weren't?
The dances weren't. We did have a building. We had quite a nice building, as I recall, on Judson. And just because I just found the address is why. Otherwise, I wouldn't know either. But there are some condos there now, but the building was quite nice. And when I asked Rabbi Skirbel about the building, he said he didn't feel it was as functional. But it's interesting that that same building existed at U of I till maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
They had a very nice library there, and I studied some at that library. When I came to Northwestern in '59, I was on the brink religiously. I had been somewhat turned off by my religious background. And I went to Hillel, and the rabbi there, Henry Skirbel, taught a course called Judaism and Modern Man. And
did you get a credit for that?
Yes, I did. It was, I think, a 3-hour credit course. And he turned me back on, and he made a very significant impact on my religious life, probably more so than any other person.
You know, if I want to talk about one memory, it's when I remember meeting Ed, which was not at Scott Hall Grill, but was at Hillel, and it was freshman. We did not have Freshman Fest, but it was probably the first weekend of school, and I remember all the women sitting arrayed in chairs and men coming up and talking. You know, it was a kind of high school dance type thing. not quite the dance, but the social arrangement. Um, and I will say also, this is where Ed proposed at Hillel.
That's what I was going to say. October 25th, 1963, right on the corner where Hillel was located is where I proposed.
So it's kind of circle. Well, I think it's always significant when you come face to face with your history and are willing to at least acknowledge it. And I've been with Morty we've both been with Morty when he actually gave a whole lecture at his home about the quota. I have to say, when I was on campus, I wasn't aware of it. You know, you're only aware of it after the fact, not during. My feeling was, they don't want me. I'm not going to live here. Which is very different, I think, than what would happen now when people have different kind of political sensitivities.
My mother was raised in Evanston and walked from 724 Forest Avenue to campus most days. And she graduated, I think, around 30, and then went to law school and graduated at 34 or 35. There were, not only was there a religious quota, which she occasionally talked about. I think once she mentioned, she overheard at a restaurant that there was a 7% Jewish quota and a 7% Catholic quota. And that may have been modified for commuter students. I really don't know. To me, as the years have gone by, what happened in 1930s, 40s, and 50s at Northwestern was not as important as to what's been happening in the current period of time. And I think there's been enormous progress made at the university, and I really, from the little I've heard and seen of Morty Shapiro, I think he's very symbolic that the past is past and we're now dealing in the present.
When we were there, it was Shabbat dinner and Israeli dancing. I have to say, I think that was the sum total of that Jewish identification. And now to see theater and Shirenu and eco groups and you know, so many different groups and shmooze when that was going here, etc. And I think that's very exciting to have that feeling that you can find so many different aspects that relate you to your heritage. So that's something that makes a difference. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking too there were 2 Jewish sororities, 2 Jewish fraternities on campus, and you never saw the sorority and fraternity kids at Hillel. Well, now it's seamless. I think it's important to know your heritage and to feel comfortable in your heritage and your religiosity. And certainly as a student, you're trying to, I mean, Ed speaks to that better than I. You know, you're trying to figure out how you fit in religiously. So Hillel is an avenue to do that, but I don't know that it's the only avenue.
I would add that after your bar or bas mitzvah, there's sort of a gap in high school. And that was, I experienced that gap, and it was my connection with Hillel that closed that gap. And I think it's important that's one of the reasons I think Hillel serves an important function for young Jewish students. And I hadn't really thought of it till now, but there aren't too many other Jewish organizations that are doing much with that high school gap.
Well, I also think this is a safe place to try out your viewpoints. And certainly we have lots of viewpoints. I think that's part of what makes us Jewish. But so to give an opportunity to sit around a table, to sit around a Shabbat table, is important.
It's 80 years down the road, I hope the the high school gap is filled in much better than it had been during my period of time. And also, I hope that the current generation of students attending universities produces the type of leadership that will produce and continue to produce excellence in the Hillel program.
And I think as I was giving my answer, I'm thinking I'm leaving out leadership, and that's so important in our mission. And so I think that the importance is that Hillel continues to allow students to dream and to execute some of their dreams. You know, my involvement now with Hillel has been so significant for me. Not only do I think that I've helped a situation, but also it's given me an opportunity to feel a part of the campus. And the very fact that I can walk down the campus and students say hello to me because I know people from here is absolutely the most wonderful thing, you know. So it's kind of interesting, and I don't think I'm typical, but Hillel has served me as well in my later life as it did in my student life, and I appreciate that.
I'd just like to add, not being a board member or not being real,
lucky you.
real close to Hillel, that I really like what I've seen the last few years, especially since Michael has come. I think he has made me and probably many other people feel extremely comfortable, extremely interested in Hillel. I've partaken of some of the events, including an evening with Coach Fitz, and I really, as Bonnie said, I think I feel as much of a part of Hillel and the university as I did when I attended, and really enjoyed it.
Go Cats!